The night was unnervingly quiet in Capital City, usually alive with its perpetual hum of power and politics, now sat under an eerie stillness. Inside the Emergency Operations Center, a group of humanity's most influential figures gathered, their faces lit only by the cold glow of the monitors lining the walls. Victor Hall, a seasoned diplomat with streaks of silver in his neatly combed hair, adjusted his tie, his sharp eyes scanning the room. Even at 55, his presence demanded respect, his reputation built on decades of navigating treacherous political waters. "Victor, you're looking like you've been sentenced to another 7-hour council meeting," quipped General Chris Gale, a towering figure with a booming laugh that could shake walls. The joke fell flat, earning only a faint smirk from Victor. "Chris, if this meeting is any shorter, it's probably because something's already gone horribly wrong," Victor replied dryly, tapping his pen against the table. Humor had always been his shield, but tonight it felt paper-thin. The room erupted in a cacophony of alarms. Red lights flashed violently as the monitors displayed chaotic feeds from across the globe. Explosions in Toronto, Beijing, and Johannesburg. Military officials barked orders into headsets, their voices drowned out by the chaos unfolding on-screen. "What the hell is going on?" demanded Chris, slamming his fist on the table. Before anyone could respond, the feed cut to a chillingly composed alien figure with translucent blue skin and glowing yellow eyes. The emblem of the Galactic Empire shimmered behind him. "Humans," the alien began, his voice resonating with a calculated calm, "your defiance has become an irritation. Tonight, we have reminded you of your place." Victor's stomach twisted as the broadcast ended, replaced by a list of confirmed casualties. Names he recognized. Allies. Friends. The president was among the dead. "This isn't just an attack," Victor said, his voice steady despite the storm raging inside him. "This is a declaration. They've assassinated our leaders to leave us divided." Elliot Shaw, a wiry intelligence operative with a knack for sardonic commentary, entered the room, his tablet glowing with intercepted communications. "Victor, you're going to love this. They've got their assassins bragging on encrypted channels. Real professional. One of them even joked about Earth being the Galactic Empire's training ground." Victor pinched the bridge of his nose, trying to maintain composure. "Training ground? Do they think this is some kind of game?" "Well," Elliot shrugged, "if it is, we're losing badly." Amid the tension, a young aide burst into the room, breathless. "Sir, there was an attempt on your life as well. You're home in Boston." Victor raised a hand to stop him. "I'm here, aren't I? Focus on the living." But the truth gnawed at him. The thought of his family home, the memories it held, now reduced to rubble, was a wound he couldn't yet address. He forced the image aside. Survival meant prioritizing the bigger picture. Chris leaned closer to Victor, his usual bravado replaced with grim determination. "You know what this means, don't you? We can't just sit here and wait for them to pick us off one by one." Victor nodded, his jaw tightening. "We have to respond, not with anger but with precision. We can't afford mistakes." The room fell silent, save for the soft hum of equipment. It was a silence heavy with the weight of impossible decisions. Victor's mind raced. He was no soldier, but he understood the value of timing. Retaliation had to be strategic, not reactionary. Elliot, ever the pragmatist, broke the silence. "Look, I know this isn't the time for optimism, but if they underestimated us this much, we've got an edge. They think we're divided, weak. That's their mistake. An edge." Chris barked, his voice rising. "Our leaders are dead, our defense is compromised, and you think we have an edge." Victor placed a firm hand on Chris's shoulder. "He's not wrong. The Empire's arrogance is our opportunity. They think humanity's strength lies in its leadership. They've forgotten where our real strength lies, in our pettiness and stubborn refusal to die." Elliot interjected, earning a rare chuckle from Chris. Victor allowed himself a brief smile. "In our ability to adapt. We've faced extinction before. and we've always found a way to survive. This time won't be any different. The monitors flickered, displaying a new alert. An intercepted message revealed the location of one of the alien assassins' command posts. The room buzzed with activity as plans were hastily drawn. "Victor, you're not seriously thinking of going after them, are you?" Chris asked, his tone a mix of concern and disbelief. Victor straightened his tie, his expression resolute. "Chris, they came to our home and slaughtered our people. If we don't show them the cost of underestimating humanity, they'll keep coming. I'm going." "Of course you are," Elliot muttered, shaking his head. "You couldn't just retire to a beach somewhere like a normal person, could you?" As the team prepared for what would undoubtedly be a perilous mission, Victor took a moment to himself, staring out the window at the city he'd spent his life protecting. The skyline was dark, smoke rising in the distance. He thought of the lives lost, the trust shattered, and the impossible task ahead. "Victor," Chris called, snapping him back to reality. "You coming, or are you planning to stand there and brood all night?" Victor turned, his lips curling into a faint smirk. "Just making sure the Empire knows what's coming for them." The group boarded an unmarked transport, the weight of the moment settling over them. As the engines roared to life, Victor's thoughts drifted to the message he would soon deliver to the Galactic Council. It wouldn't be a plea for peace or an offer of negotiation. It would be a warning. The Galactic Council chamber was an architectural marvel, a domed colossus of shimmering alloys and transparent walls that gave the illusion of floating in space. Stars sparkled in the void beyond, a constant reminder of the vastness of the galaxy and humanity's precarious place within it. Victor Hall stepped onto the central floor, his polished shoes clicking against the pristine surface. Despite the grandeur surrounding him, his mind was sharp, focused on the task ahead. He was here to do what humanity demanded: hold the Galactic Empire accountable for its crimes. "Ah, the human arrives," a voice sneered from above. Counselor Zarth, an amphibian-like alien with a perpetually smug expression, leaned forward in his elevated seat. His gelatinous skin shimmered under the chamber's artificial lighting. "Late, as usual. How quaint." Victor ignored the bait, his expression unflinching. Beside him, Colonel Jason Grant adjusted his military uniform, his towering frame exuding authority. Behind him, Elliot Shaw stood slightly apart, tablet in hand, scanning for any signs of duplicity among the alien representatives. It was hard not to notice that the human delegation, even with their stiff resolve, appeared woefully out of place among the other species' exotic grandeur. "Gentle beings of the Council," Victor began, his voice carrying a calm authority, "I come here not as a diplomat, but as a representative of a grieving world. The attacks on Earth, on our leaders, our citizens, were acts of terrorism, acts we know were sanctioned by the Galactic Empire." The chamber erupted in murmurs. Representatives of various species exchanged glances, some feigning shock, others visibly disinterested. Zarth, however, broke into a toothy grin. "Sanction? Bold words for a species that barely qualifies as a member of this council." Jason clenched his fists, but Victor raised a hand, signaling restraint. He was used to these tactics. Condescension was as much a weapon in this arena as any blade. "We have evidence," Victor continued, gesturing to Elliot, who projected a hologram from his tablet. The room dimmed as intercepted communications played, revealing the Empire's orders to the assassins. Clear, irrefutable. The murmurs grew louder, this time tinged with unease. Even Zartha's smirk faltered for a moment, though he quickly masked it with feigned indignation. Fabrications, lies from a desperate species trying to elevate itself above its station. Victor took a deliberate step forward, his piercing gaze fixed on Zarth. "We've buried enough of our people this week, Counselor. We don't need to bury the truth as well." There was a beat of silence, heavy and oppressive. Then, from a far corner of the chamber, a low, guttural laugh echoed. All eyes turned to General Threx, a reptilian figure clad in ornate armor, his scaled face twisted into a mocking grin. "The human has a point," Threx rumbled. "If the Empire truly had nothing to do with this, why not cooperate to clear their name?" Victor filed the comment away, his instincts telling him Threx wasn't as aligned with the Empire as he appeared. But Zarth was quick to counter. "The Empire has no obligation to entertain baseless accusations. If the humans cannot protect their leaders, that is their failure, not ours." "Failure?" Jason's voice cut through the room like a whip. "You call mass assassinations and cowardly attacks a failure of leadership? If this council had any spine, you'd be holding the Empire accountable right now." The room tensed. Victor shot Jason a warning glance, but inwardly, he admired the Colonel's fire. It was a dangerous game they were playing, and Jason's bluntness was a double-edged sword. Elliot, ever the opportunist, chose this moment to add his own twist. "Counselor Zarth," he said, his voice light but laced with sarcasm, "perhaps you could enlighten us as to why one of the intercepted transmissions mentions your name specifically? I mean, I'm sure it's just a coincidence." The chamber went deathly quiet. Zarth's eyes narrowed, his gelatinous form rippling with barely contained fury. "You dare." Victor seized a moment. This council exists to uphold justice, not to protect the powerful from scrutiny. If you refuse to act, then humanity will act alone. But I warn you all, our response will not be measured. It will not be restrained. The silence that followed was deafening. Victor's words hung in the air, a challenge that no one dared to meet head-on. For a brief moment, he allowed himself to feel the weight of what he'd just said. Humanity had no real leverage here, but sometimes leverage wasn't about power. It was about conviction. General Threx broke the silence, his voice calm but calculated. "It seems the humans are not as naive as some would believe. Perhaps the Empire has underestimated them." Zarth shot him a venomous look, but Threx's expression remained impassive. Victor made a mental note of the exchange. Threx was no friend of the Empire. That much was clear. Whether he could be trusted was another matter entirely. The session adjourned in disarray, with no official resolution. As the human delegation left the chamber, Jason leaned in close to Victor. "You realize you just threatened an entire galaxy, right?" Victor allowed himself a faint smirk. "It's only a threat if they believe we can back it up. Let's make sure they do." Elliot, walking just behind them, chuckled. "You're terrifying when you're like this. You know that." Victor stopped, turning to face his team. "Terrifying isn't enough. They have to see us as more than that. They have to see us as inevitable." As they exited the council building, the alien skyline stretched out before them, a dizzying array of towers and lights. But Victor's focus was already elsewhere. They hadn't won here, not yet, but they had sown seeds of doubt, and doubt was a powerful thing. He glanced at Threx's retreating figure, his mind racing with possibilities. If there was a way to turn the cracks in the Empire's armor into fissures, they would find it, and when they did, the galaxy would learn what humanity was truly capable of. Victor Hall sat at the head of a table in a dimly lit command room deep beneath Earth's surface. The hum of machinery filled the space as holographic projections flickered above the table, displaying a dizzying array of intelligence reports, schematics, and troop movements. His team surrounded him. Jason Grant, his ever-reliable military strategist Elliot Shaw, the sharp-tongued intelligence operative, and a handful of trusted Earth military leaders. Victor studied the reports, his sharp eyes scanning every line of text as if willing the data to reveal the Empire's vulnerabilities. Despite the pressure, he exuded a calm authority that steadied the room. "We have their command structure," he said, gesturing to the holographic display of the Empire's capital. "The key is here in the palace. Take out the king, and the rest of their hierarchy will crumble." Jason leaned forward, tapping his finger on the projection. "That palace is a fortress. Layers of defense systems, elite guards, and who knows what else. It's not just risky, it's suicidal." Victor met his gaze, unflinching. It's the only way to show the galaxy that humanity won't stand by while they treat us as prey. If we wait, the Empire will hit us again and harder. We need to hit first, and we need to hit decisively. Elliot, lounging with his chair tilted back, smirked. No offense, Victor, but I hope you've got more of a plan than just charge the fortress and hope for the best. That sounds like something Jason would suggest. Jason shot him a glare. Keep talking, Shaw. Maybe I'll accidentally leave you behind when this all goes down. Enough, Victor said, the faintest hint of a smile tugging at his lips. We're not storming the palace. We're slipping inside. Elliot, you've been intercepting their communications. What can you tell us about their security? Elliot straightened, swiping at his tablet. Their defenses are overconfident, just like their leadership. There's a weak point in their energy grid, a maintenance tunnel that bypasses their primary scanners. If we can access it, we'll have a clear path to the palace's lower levels. Victor nodded. Good. Now we just need a distraction to pull their attention away. Jason crossed his arms. I'll lead a decoy assault. A small strike team hitting one of their outer defense outposts should be enough to force them to redirect their forces. Victor considered this for a moment. Risky but effective. You'll have to keep them engaged long enough for us to get inside. Elliot sighed, tapping his pen against the table. Great. Jason gets to blow stuff up, and I get to crawl through a tunnel. Why do I always get the glamorous jobs? Because you're the only one who can operate under pressure without getting shot, Victor replied, earning a chuckle from the group. The levity was short-lived as Victor's tone turned serious. This isn't just about taking down the king. This is about sending a message. If we succeed, the council will have no choice but to take us seriously. And if we fail, he let the words hang in the air. Jason clapped a hand on Victor's shoulder. We won't fail. We've got you leading us, and I've never known you to lose. Flattery will only get you so far, Jason, Victor replied, though the sincerity in Jason's words struck a chord. He looked around the table, taking in the faces of the men who had trusted him with their lives. This is bigger than any of us. Let's make sure it counts. The room buzzed with focused energy as preparations began. Elliot pored over schematics, memorizing every twist and turn of the tunnel network. Jason coordinated with military commanders, handpicking the team for his diversionary assault. Victor, ever the diplomat, drafted a backup plan, a message to be delivered to the Galactic Council in the event of their failure, outlining the Empire's crimes and humanity's resolve. As the day of the mission approached, tension mounted. Victor found himself in a rare moment of solitude, standing in a small observation room overlooking Earth's vast landscape. The sun was setting, painting the horizon in hues of orange and red. It reminded him of the countless sunsets he had seen over the years, each one a reminder of the beauty of the world he was fighting to protect. You're brooding again, Elliot's voice cut through his thoughts. Victor turned to see him leaning against the doorway, his ever-present smirk softened by a rare look of concern. You know, it's okay to let someone else carry the weight for a change. Victor chuckled softly. If I did that, you'd complain about having to work harder. True, Elliot admitted, stepping into the room. But seriously, you've got this. We've got this. And if it all goes to hell, well, I'll make sure your eulogy is suitably dramatic. Thanks, Elliot. That's oddly comforting. When the time came, the team boarded a sleek, black stealth ship. The atmosphere inside was electric, a mixture of anticipation and dread. Jason ran through final checks with his strike team, while Elliot double-checked the infiltration gear. Victor sat quietly, his mind racing with every possible outcome. As the ship slipped into orbit, the Galactic Empire's capital came into view, a sprawling metropolis of towering spires and glowing energy grids. It was beautiful, in its way, but Victor saw only the arrogance it represented. Jason stood by the airlock, his rifle slung over his shoulder. You sure you don't want me to come with you, Victor? You're needed on the ground, Jason. Keep them busy. We'll take care of the rest. Jason nodded, his expression unreadable. "Just make sure you come back, old man. Earth needs you." Victor managed a small smile. "Earth needs all of us." As Jason's team disembarked for their diversionary assault, the ship veered toward the maintenance tunnel. Victor, Elliot, and their small team of operatives prepared for the infiltration. The tension was palpable as they entered the dark, narrow passage. The only sound the hum of their equipment. Elliot whispered, "So, how much do you think the king's crown is worth?" Asking for a friend. Victor shot him a look, but the humor lightened the mood, if only for a moment. They moved forward, the weight of their mission pressing down on them. Ahead lay the palace, the Empire's heart of power, and with it, the chance to change humanity's fate forever. The air inside the Galactic Empire's royal palace was heavy, a stifling mix of perfumed opulence and unspoken tension. Victor Hall moved through the dimly lit corridors with a precision born of decades of experience, his footsteps soft but deliberate. The faint hum of energy shields and the distant echo of guards' boots were constant reminders of how little room for error they had. Behind him, Elliot Shaw followed closely, his movements uncharacteristically silent. The humor that usually adorned Elliot's words was gone, replaced by a sharp focus that mirrored the gravity of the mission. Ahead, the ornate doors of the council chamber loomed, their surface etched with depictions of the Empire's conquests. Victor studied the images briefly. Scenes of alien worlds brought to heel, civilizations erased under the Empire's rule. He felt a surge of anger but quickly tempered it. This was not the time for rage. It was a time for precision. Elliot leaned in, his voice a whisper. "Security grid is still on a loop. We got about 5 minutes before someone notices. Let's make them count." Victor gave a single nod, his gaze sharp and determined. As they approached the doors, 2 royal guards stood at attention, their alien forms encased in sleek armor that glowed faintly with embedded tech. Victor motioned to the operative behind him, who silently drew a compact energy weapon. With a pair of muffled shots, the guards crumpled to the floor. Elliot raised an eyebrow. "Efficient. Remind me not to get on your bad side." Victor allowed himself a faint smile, but said nothing. Instead, he stepped forward, placing his hand on the biometric scanner beside the door. Elliot had cracked the system earlier, feeding it a false identity that would grant them access. The scanner blinked green, and the doors hissed open. Inside, the chamber was a vision of excess. Golden light bathed the room, reflecting off walls inlaid with precious metals and gemstones. At its center sat King Drazer, a towering figure clad in ceremonial armor that gleamed with an almost predatory brilliance. His throne, an imposing structure of black crystal, seemed to pulse with energy. Drazer's glowing eyes fixed on Victor the moment he entered. "So," the king said, his voice a deep, resonant growl, "the humans send their diplomat to grovel before me. How quaint." Victor stepped forward, his posture calm but commanding. "I didn't come to grovel, Your Majesty. I came to deliver a message." Drazer laughed, the sound echoing through the chamber. "A message? From a species on the brink of annihilation? I'm curious. What could you possibly say that would interest me?" Victor reached into his coat, drawing a small hollow projector. With a flick of his wrist, it activated, displaying the intercepted communications that tied Drazer directly to the assassinations on Earth. The king's laughter stopped abruptly, replaced by a dangerous silence. "You thought Earth would break under your attack," Victor said, his voice steady. "You thought we would fall into chaos, that we'd be too weak to retaliate. You were wrong." Drazer rose from his throne, his towering frame casting a shadow over the chamber. "You overstep, human. This council will never believe your lies." Victor smirked, his calm demeanor unnerving even in the face of the king's fury. "I don't need them to believe. I just need them to see what happens when you underestimate humanity." The king's eyes narrowed, his hand moving to the hilt of a ceremonial blade at his side. "Do you think you can leave here alive? Do you think your insolence will go unpunished?" Before Victor could respond, The doors to the chamber burst open, and a squad of royal guards poured in. Elliot cursed under his breath, raising his weapon as the operatives behind them moved to intercept the attackers. Energy bolts lit up the room, and the once opulent chamber was thrown into chaos. Victor darted to cover behind a pillar, his mind racing. Elliot was pinned down near the far wall, exchanging fire with 2 guards, while the rest of the team fought desperately to hold their ground. Drazer, however, remained at the center of the room, watching the battle unfold with a predatory smile. "You should have stayed on Earth, human," Drazer called, his voice cutting through the noise. "You cannot win this." Victor ignored him, focusing instead on his team. He spotted Elliot motioning toward the throne, where a faint energy field shimmered. It was a defensive barrier, likely powered by a nearby generator. If they could disable it, they'd have a clear shot at the king. "Elliot, the generator," Victor called, his voice sharp. Elliot nodded, ducking behind a fallen statue as he moved toward the console on the chamber's far side. Meanwhile, Jason Grant's voice crackled over Victor's comm. "We're keeping the outer defenses busy, but we can't hold them off forever. You need to finish this." Victor clenched his jaw. Time was running out. Elliot reached the generator, his fingers flying across the control panel. "I've got it," he shouted, just as the energy field around the throne flickered and died. Victor didn't hesitate. He emerged from cover, his weapon raised, and fired a precise shot at Drazer's chest. The king moved with inhuman speed, dodging the blast and closing the distance between them in a single, fluid motion. Before Victor could react, Drazer's blade slashed toward him, grazing his shoulder and sending him stumbling backward. "You're outmatched, human," Drazer sneered, raising his blade for a killing blow. But Victor wasn't done. With a surge of determination, he reached into his coat and pulled a concealed dagger, a weapon gifted to him long ago by an alien ally. Its blade glowed faintly with a shimmering blue light. Drazer hesitated, his eyes narrowing. "Where did you get that?" Victor didn't answer. Instead, he lunged forward, the blade striking true. It pierced through the king's armor, driving deep into his chest. Drazer let out a roar of pain, his massive frame collapsing to the ground. The chamber fell silent. The remaining guards, seeing their king fall, hesitated before retreating in disarray. Elliot approached cautiously, his weapon still raised, but Victor waved him off. "It's over," Victor said, his voice heavy with exhaustion. Elliot looked at the fallen king, then back at Victor. "You really know how to make an impression, don't you?" Victor allowed himself a faint smile, though his body ached from the battle. "Let's make sure the galaxy gets the message." They activated the holo projector once more, broadcasting their victory to the Galactic Council and beyond. The image of King Drazer's lifeless form sent shockwaves across the galaxy, forcing the Council to reckon with humanity's strength and resolve. As Victor and his team left the palace, the weight of their actions settled over them. The battle was won, but the war for humanity's place in the galaxy was just beginning. Victor glanced at Elliot, his expression grim but resolute. "Let's go home," he said. "We've got work to do."